At 3:45 p.m. on May 16, 2025, Subrata Ghosh stood at 28,139 feet on the Hillary Step, just 200 feet below Everest's summit. He had made it. After years of training, the 45-year-old Indian climber had conquered the roof of the world, but his body was shutting down. When his climbing partners urged him to continue descending, Ghosh refused. He couldn't move anymore. Within hours, he became the second foreign climber to die on Everest in 2025, dying at the exact spot where Sir Edmund Hillary once carved his name into history. Just 24 hours earlier, and 2,139 feet below, Filipino climber Philip Santiago had collapsed at Camp 4. The 45-year-old businessman from Manila had arrived at the camp visibly exhausted after pushing through the death zone. Both men were part of the same expedition, the Mountaineering Association of Krishnanagar Snowy Everest Expedition 2025. 2 climbers, same age, same expedition, dead within a day of each other. 5 people would die on Everest by May 29, 2025. That number sounds almost merciful compared to the 18 who died in 2023. But here's what makes this year different. It wasn't avalanches or storms that killed them. It was the mountain itself. Philip Santiago wasn't supposed to be at Camp Farrer on May 15th. The successful businessman from the Philippines had planned his summit attempt for May 17th when weather conditions were forecast to be ideal, but Everest doesn't follow schedules. At 26,000 feet, Camp 4 sits in what mountaineers call the death zone, where oxygen levels drop to 1/3 of sea level. Your body literally starts dying, cell by cell. Santiago had been climbing for 14 hours straight through temperatures of -40 degrees Fahrenheit. His North Face summit suit, designed to withstand -60, couldn't protect him from what was happening inside his body. Picture this. You're breathing, but getting no air. Every step takes 15 breaths. Your heart rate stays locked at 140 beats per minute, even when you're standing still. Santiago's expedition leader, Bodharaj Bandari, would later tell the Himalayan Times that Santiago arrived at camp visibly fatigued. That's mountaineering speak for barely alive. The camp itself is a collection of tents perched on ice at a 40-degree angle. One wrong step, and you fall 10,000 feet down the Lhotse face. Santiago made it to his tent at approximately 8 p.m. His Sherpa team tried to get him to drink water, to eat something, anything, but altitude had already won. Think about that. Santiago traveled 8,000 miles from Manila, spent $45,000 on permits and logistics, trained for 3 years, and died 3,000 feet short of his dream. He never even got to try for the summit. The mountain killed him during what should have been a rest stop. His body would remain at Camp 4 for 72 hours before recovery teams could reach him. The same winds that cleared the summit for others made it impossible to evacuate the dead. 24 hours after Santiago collapsed, Subrata Ghosh was living his dream. The 45-year-old from Krishnanagar, India, had started his summit push at 9 p.m. on May 15th, climbing through the night when winds dropped to 20 muipisiyo, practically calm by Everest standards. Unlike Santiago, Ghosh was strong. He passed the balcony at 27,700 feet on schedule. He navigated the knife-edge southeast ridge where one slip means death on either side. At 11 a.m. on May 16th, Ghosh stood on top of the world. He had maybe 5 minutes of clarity to take photos, plant his flag, and realize he'd done it. But here's what happens at 29,032 feet. Your brain swells. It's called high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE. Your skull becomes a pressure cooker with no release valve. First problem, confusion. Second problem, loss of coordination. Third problem, you stop caring about living. Ghosh started his descent strong, but by the time he reached the Hillary Step, that 40-foot rock face just below the summit, something had broken. The Hillary Step requires climbers to rappel down a near-vertical cliff while clipped to a single rope. Ghosh stopped. His climbing partners, including 3 Sherpas, begged him to continue. "I can't," he said, 2 words that meant death at that altitude. The Sherpas faced an impossible choice: stay and die with him, or descend and live with the decision. At 28,039 feet, you can't carry someone. You can barely carry yourself. They stayed with Ghosh for 2 hours, trying everything. But as the afternoon weather window closed and clouds rolled in, they had to leave. Ghosh died alone at the Hillary Step, his body freezing solid within hours. He remains there today, another landmark for future climbers to pass. Let that sink in. He achieved his life's greatest goal and died 193 feet into his descent. But the deadliest place on Everest in 2025 wasn't the death zone. It was base camp itself. At 17,598 feet, base camp sits below the Khumbu icefall on a moving glacier. It's supposed to be safe. It's where climbers recover, where medical tents operate, where helicopter evacuations are possible. On April 2nd, before the climbing season even officially began, 55-year-old Lahan Nima Sherpa died from altitude sickness at base camp. Think about that. A Sherpa, genetically adapted to altitude over thousands of years, killed by elevation at the safest spot on the mountain. Just meters away from where foreign climbers were posting selfies, Ngima Sherpa's lungs were filling with fluid. High-altitude pulmonary edema, ALP, turns your lungs into water balloons. You drown in your own body fluids while breathing air. 1 month later, in early May, Ngima Dorje Sherpa suffered a brain hemorrhage at the same base camp. He worked for 7 Summits Treks, one of the most experienced operators on the mountain. The hemorrhage likely came from a blood vessel bursting under pressure from being at altitude, even at just 17,598 feet. These weren't inexperienced climbers. These were Sherpas who lived their entire lives in the Himalayas. If base camp could kill them, what chance did foreign climbers have higher up? 3 days after Dorje's death, Penchiri Sherpa was working at Camp Ukbor, 19,900 feet, when his heart stopped. Cardiac arrest. He was setting fixed ropes for clients, doing the work that makes Western dreams of Everest possible. They helicoptered him to Kathmandu, but he died days later in a hospital bed, never regaining consciousness. The math is brutal. 3 of the 5 Everest deaths in 2025 were Sherpas. The people who make these expeditions possible bear the highest cost. Here's what makes 2025's deaths particularly revealing. None of them were from avalanches, none from falls, none from storms. The mountain killed these 5 people simply by being what it is, too high for human life. Nepal issued 408 permits to foreign climbers in 2025, just shy of 2024's record 479. Add the required Sherpa support, and over 900 people were attempting to summit from the Nepal side alone. Yet only 5 died. The death rate dropped to approximately 1.1%, the lowest in years. Veteran expedition leader Alan Arnett credits one factor: helicopter rescues. In previous years, Camp 3 at 23,600 feet was the highest point for helicopter evacuation. In 2025, improved helicopters and expert pilots managed rescues from as high as 24,500 feet. 3 climbers who would have died in previous years were plucked off the mountain and survived. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those who died in 2025 died from being human. Santiago's exhaustion, Ghosh's brain swelling. The Sherpa's organ failures, these weren't accidents. They were biological inevitabilities at extreme altitude. Imagine this. Above 26,000 feet, your body consumes itself. You're burning 20,000 calories a day but can barely digest 3,000. Your body eats its own muscle for fuel. Your blood turns to sludge. Your brain cells die by the millions. American speed climber Tyler Andrews, attempting to break the 20-hour record from base camp to summit without oxygen, described hallucinating full conversations with people who weren't there. After 19 hours of climbing, just 1,500 feet from the summit, he turned back. "I didn't trust my brain anymore," he told Outside Magazine. That's what killed these 5 people in 2025. Not storms or avalanches, but the simple fact that humans aren't meant to exist at the cruising altitude of a 737. The Hillary Step where Subrata Ghosh died now serves as a grotesque landmark. Future climbers will pass his frozen body, perhaps using it as a waypoint, just as they do with Green Boots, the Indian climber, who died in 1996 and still marks the route at 27,900 feet. Mount Everest has now killed approximately 340 people since records began. The 2025 deaths prove something crucial. Even with perfect weather, even with helicopter rescues, even with the best equipment money can buy, Everest kills people simply by being Everest. The mountain doesn't care about your dreams, your training, or your $45,000 permit fee. At 29,032 feet, you're not conquering anything. You're just trying to survive long enough to come back down. And for 5 people in 2025, that was asking too much.